I want to remind all of you how important the framework around all of the good human activities are. It took Catherine several years of training and speaking and selling to come up with what I consider a magic formula. And that is, it really is wonderful to build relationships at the same time that you're getting better at your own business development and personal development. So I really like the way she has structured this in all of her offerings. And I'm going to try very hard to adhere to this framework as we talk today about the topic I'm going to be sharing. So I'm Pandora Hodges. I own a company called Sharpline Sales. And you can see my very bizarre background. I started out my career out of university as a software engineer. And I did crazy stuff like things for oil and gas, things for NASA, things for software companies that sold software as a service. And I went from there to become a technology consultant because people just needed help figuring out things like, how do I do disaster recovery? How do I implement packaged software? So I did that for a while. And in 1996, I met Catherine Brown, and we worked at the same firm, but we had two very different jobs. We supported the Southwest region for a PeopleSoft implementation firm, and I was in charge of selling implementation gigs, and she was in charge of recruiting the people who would staff those. And so I want you to think about two handles on the faucet, right? One is recruiting and one is sales. And we had to learn to get our flow exactly even. Are we scalded people or we froze them, right? We either froze them with all the cold water or we scalded them. So we developed a really close relationship. And so we've been friends and colleagues all these years. And I left that firm to continue to do software implementation sales. And I ran a PeopleSoft practice for a long time. And then in 2008, I started cold calling and appointment setting. So I'm going to talk about some of my experiences from my work cold calling and appointment setting, because I think it's applicable to anyone, no matter how small their business. Oh, now I'm going backwards. That's very weird. So let's see if I can get to the right slide. All right. Okay. So at Sharpline Sales, the reality is our work is completely focused around providing contract sales callers who cold call and cold email on behalf of other companies. So it would be like if I came in and white branded myself as your organization, Bruce, and then I called on your behalf to find people, the right people, right? My job would be to find influencers or decision makers and then set a qualified meeting on your behalf. And that meeting would be maybe an introductory meeting, maybe it would be a discovery meeting. That depends, on what the client really needs. But we're setting those meetings so that you get to have qualified conversations. And you want me to focus on the cold calling so that you can focus on closing the business. So that's my niche in the sales world. And I've been doing that since 2008. And what I've learned over the course of the years is that over the last 16 years, there are the same things that you have to consider every time you are starting a sales campaign. It doesn't really matter if it's cold calling or if you're working on, an email marketing campaign, but there are certain things that have to be in place all the time. And I call these the tenets of successful sales campaigns. And so Catherine asked me just to come on for a few weeks and share a few of those. But the very first and most important one is getting your targets right. So we'll go through as much of this list as we can in 3 weeks. I don't expect to get anywhere near through all of it. But this morning I thought we'd start by working on what does it mean to have the right target, because that affects everybody. So having the right target really means that you are strategically curating your calling list or your emailing list. And there are lots of different ways to come up with that list. And we're going to brainstorm what some of those are this morning. But what makes a great list for my client A may not be a great list or a source of a list for client B. And that's going to be true for all of you. So when we get down to the brainstorming session, I'm hoping we're going to inspire each other, but I want you to be thinking for just a minute, where do you go to start curating your ideal list? Does that make sense? Is everybody with me? Okay. So when you're working on a strategically curated calling list or emailing list, whatever that might be, what we're looking for are the right decision makers at the right kind of companies. And we're looking for, do we have enough companies and individuals that we can actually get some ongoing revenue generating activities going so that we have a flow and we're filling our funnel. And that means that not only do we have to know who the right targets are at the right companies, but we also have to have the right contact information. So if you're doing an email campaign, you need a valid email. If you're doing a calling campaign, you do need a phone number, but you may want to follow up with an email, or you may generate a lot of your things out of LinkedIn, so you need a lot of LinkedIn followers. So you need to have the right information. So I know you guys, many of you are owner and seller and implementer of your business. So I want to be real careful. I don't want anybody to check out right now, because it's really easy to say, oh, what she does is for bigger companies. I'm telling you, stay with me, because these things apply to solopreneurs as well as they do to bigger companies. So hang with me as we go into this discussion. Don't be judgmental. Don't say that won't work for me. Let's just stay really curious and share with each other and see if we can figure out, how do we figure out individually, and how can we inspire each other to find the right target. The right target is important for a lot of reasons, but one of them that affects you as much as affects anybody else is, if time is money, and delay causes your funnel not to stay full. So if you're not calling the right people or you're not emailing the right people, then what happens is you're spending time that's not fruitful. You get discouraged. It costs you money, it costs you time, it costs you energy. So this is important no matter who you are and no matter how big your company is. So let's talk for a minute about what makes a lead right. So I'm going to maybe expand your thinking, but I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to open it up. Talk to me, in your opinion, what makes a lead the right target? I'm hearing industry in this case, because that's where you're focused now. I'm hearing departments. I'm hearing titles. And I heard that you added decision maker and influencer. Anybody else? Anybody ever talk to a gatekeeper and find it valuable? I sometimes can befriend a gatekeeper and get some really interesting information, or where I can't get somebody on the phone, I can make sure that an email gets read. Anybody else? Okay, so I have industry, department, title, influencer, decision maker. I'm adding gatekeepers because they are sometimes helpful. All right, so I'm gonna go to my next slide. I'm gonna go ahead and have us discuss, how do you guys get your leads? How do you, and by lead, like I'm a target account seller, right? So I'm trying to sell to an organization. Some people are trying to sell just to a person. So how do you guys get lists or names of the influencers or the decision makers or the gatekeepers or the people that you want to navigate to? How are you doing that today? Because you're basically saying referrals, and I think everybody in here wants to get more and more referrals. And you're also saying social media, right? Which could be LinkedIn or something else, depending on what your objective is. So I think those are great potential sources. How are you curating the people that you recruit to connect with you on LinkedIn? Because we're going to talk about that a little bit. So I want to warn all of you, I'm going to do everything I can to wrap this up kind of quickly, and then we can pick this up and talk about it next week. But I want to tell you that most people use one of these. They use social media, could be LinkedIn or it could be something else, could be Facebook or Instagram. It could be inbound leads. Maybe you have a lead magnet that you either people can get through your website, or they can get it through something that you published on LinkedIn. Does anybody use trade shows or speaking engagements? Think about that for next week, how we're going to work around inside trade show information or conferences. Does anybody go to conferences where they meet people? How about speaking engagements? Okay, Bruce does that. Do any of you buy lists? Do you use lead companies like Zoom or Apollo? Any of those? How many of you do email marketing? Awesome. Super proud of you guys. How many of you just have a dream list of clients? For example, if I were to say, I would really love if over the next 2 years I could close 4 of these 10 clients. How many of you have a dream list? You might think about that, right? Other oil and gas companies that you might want to get to, Holly, or Bruce, in your case, it might be people that are already, connected with you at LinkedIn, but you really want to focus on them, right? So you might pick a way to curate that list. Any other ways that you guys can think of that you might get leads? Okay, so it is 10:30 and I want to be respectful of your time. I'm going to continue this next week, and we're going to talk about how to work within each of these different areas to get leads, and how to curate from this plethora of options to gather leads. How do we curate the ones that are going to be the best options for us? So I want to thank all of you for coming, and you're welcome to drop off. I'm going to stay on for a few minutes. Anybody that wants to visit or has a question, I'll be here.